everyone, I'm Allie. Join me in creating this triangle crystal necklace featuring a larger Potomac Crystal Triangle in the 23mm side, as well as some of the trillion crystals. If you need any materials, go ahead and look below the video in the description to shop with us online. Gather up all your materials and let's get started. So to get started on our trilogy necklace, we're going to be using the 23mm Potomac Crystal Triangles, using those in a set Hubble stitch bezel. And then for the chain portion, we are going to be using some of the trillions. So we're sticking with that triangle look and getting that nice look of the really beautiful, beautiful, huge stone. I'm going to be doing my example for this project in the opal of the 23mm triangle. So we're working with opal. And then I have the trillions in the plain crystal. I have set here some 11 O's in silver, some 15 O's in gold, and then 2 colors of 8 O's, working with both the silver as well as the gold. In the example piece here, I did some transparent thistle and some of the silver as well, the Duracoat silver. So we're going to be using that also. It's going to help us to kind of keep track of what we're working on. So to begin, I'm going to start with Hubble stitch. And we are going to be doing 15 pieces of Hubble stitch, or 15 Hubble stitches. I'm going to be using the silver beads to start the Hubble. So we have 3 beads that are going to go onto our thread. And I'm using the size 6 dragon thread and leaving just a little bit of a tail. I want to sew back through the first 2 beads and come on out before the 3rd bead. From here, we're going to add one of our gold beads in and sew down through the 3rd bead. So our 4th bead gets added in there. You're going to notice this always sits then like a little foosball player. We're coming out of that 3rd bead then, and we're going to add 3 more of our silver beads. Hubble stitch is a little bit different. I have a video on Hubble if you need to learn how to do that independent from this video. And we're going to sew back up through bead number 1 now when we continue. From here, we add bead number 4 and we sew through bead number 2. So bead number 3 just kind of hangs out right there at the bottom. See how my little foosball men want to sit up? So we're going to repeat this a total of 15 times. Now you will notice as you add your 3 beads and you push them down to the last section of your Hubble stitch, you go back to bead number 1 and sew up toward bead number 2, that your little foosball guys, like a foosball table, will want to turn. So they will want to, and if they happen to get separated, just slide them right back down, trying to make very little thread show. Put that gold bead on and sew through bead number 2. So bead number 3 only ever gets that 1 strand of thread through it. And you'll notice, see how they want to flip there? That's the reason that we're doing 2 different colors, is that when we get back to doing the back of the bezel, we can keep track of the gold, that's going to be the top, and the silver, that's going to be the back. So go ahead and continue adding in a total of 15 of your Hubble sections. So here again, 3 beads go on. This is my 4th Hubble. I'm going up through bead number 1 toward bead number 2. That's going to create that little Y, push it down next to the previous one. Add bead number 4 and sew down through bead number 2. So it's almost like a herringbone right angle weave combo. Keep going then, adding in your foosball men until you have 15 total. Once we have our 15 Hubble stitch beads, and you can see again how that gold bead kind of wants to flip from one side to another, we are going to bring it into a rounded circle. So to do so, I'm going to be coming out of my last Hubble stitch right here. Put that gold up to the top. And what I'm going to do is go back to the beginning, and I'm going to sew through that first Hubble stitch piece. And then we're going to tie a little knot. So going through that first Hubble stitch piece, I'm going to sew through bead number 1. So my thread's coming out of the end. I'm going back through bead number 1. And I know it's bead number 1 because that gold bead sits right next to it. I'm going to sew through bead number 4, through bead number 2, and back through bead number 1. That's going to circle this Hubble stitch around and connect those two pieces. Now, obviously, there is also the thread still showing there. So I'm going to go around one more time, this time just through beads number 1, bead number 2, and then coming out of bead number 2, so you'll notice I skipped bead number 4. Coming out of bead number 2, my thread ends are in the same location. Let's just quick tie a knot so that way it doesn't come undone at all. And I'm just going to leave that there. Now what I want to do is make sure that this Hubble collection here all sits so that way it's starting to form my triangular shape. I want to link on to the bottom of all of my Hubble units. So that silver bottom bead. So sometimes the gold's at the top there or at the bottom. We're going to flip to the silver. So I'm going to be linking on to all of those. So I need to take my thread and needle right now, and I'm going to sew through that bottom silver bead. Push all of those gold beads kind of towards the top. And what we're going to do is we are going to sew through. So I'm just going to sew through that middle to bring my needle towards the top so you can see it. Pushing that stop thread out. So see how it's starting to form, and I can flip them as I need to as I circle around and go around in the circle, making sure all the gold beads are to the outer edge. And the first thing I'm going to do is sew from one silver bead to the next. So I'm sewing from one silver bottom to the next. That connects the first 2 Hubble units. That's going to be one of my corners. Now I'm going to sew in a series of 4 times a gold bead between my next Hubble units. So see how I had to flip that one so that the silver is at the bottom? I'm going to sew a gold bead on and sew through the next bottom Hubble unit. Flip that one there too, make sure the gold's facing towards the outside. Add a gold bead and sew through that next bottom Hubble unit. Once again, flip that guy. See, the gold ones all want to flip towards the middle. It's just kind of the natural way Hubble works. This is my 3rd gold bead that I'm adding between my Hubble units. Now I have my 4th gold bead that I'm going to add between my Hubble units. And then after you add 4 beads, you're going to get to your next corner. Twist this, make sure the silver is at the bottom, and sew directly into the next silver. Flipping over then, I'm going to repeat, sewing in 4 beads for my bottom. So I'm doing these in gold so we can keep track of our sides. But basically what we're doing is we are creating a triangle from the Hubble stitch. So there was 1 bead. See, the 2 silvers sit next to one another. You know that's the corner. And again, we add 4 gold beads between all of our bottom units. There's 1. This is 2. Here's number 3. It's always nice. You can do it a lot quicker when they sit at your gold, or your top of your Hubble stitch actually sits towards the outside. I have 1 more to add. Flip that Hubble unit there. And then after I add this gold bead, that's my 4th one in the series. I'm going to not add any other beads and sew right over to the next silver bead. So see, right there is my base. I'm sewing right over to the next piece of the Hubble. Once again, flip down the piece if you need to. And now we're back into adding 4 gold beads between each of the bottom of our Hubble units. So gold bead goes on, sew through the bottom of the Hubble unit. How will you know it's the bottom of the Hubble unit? It will be the bead that sits directly below the gold bead that's already there. I'm adding 2. I'm going to flip that guy. I'm going to add 3. And you're going to feel like this is kind of a jumbled mess. Yes, it will feel that way. But you see it's starting to lay out into that triangular shape. Here's my 4th one that I'm going to go into. And then I'm going to sew back through those first 2 beads that my thread originally came out of. When I pull this then, you can see, hey, look, it's already sitting in a triangle. I have my 2 points there, point here, point here. Now what we're going to do, and this is what our triangle is going to sit inside of. From here, we're going to get to the outer edge of the triangle. And when I'm looking at my sample piece, what we're going to be adding now to the outer edge is we're going to be adding a series of 3 15-0 seed beads that are going to sit right above our gold bead. So to do so, I wet my thread and needle. to come out through that gold bead. So how am I getting that to come out through my gold bead? And get my green thread out of there. And I'm going to take my thread and needle, and we are going to sew up through the first bead of the Hubble unit that we're currently in, which we're in bead number 3 of that base Hubble. I'm going to sew up bead number 1 toward bead number 2. And then we're going to sew from bead number 1 out. So we're coming out of bead number 4, that top gold bead. Now we're going to have a total of these top gold beads here. We are going to have a total of 5 of them on each side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we have the corner, and we have 5 more, etc. I'm going to take my 15 O's, which are my gold beads. I'm going to grab 3 15 O's. And what we're going to do is create this little picot trim that's hanging out right above my alternate seed bead color. So 3 beads get added on, and then you're going to circle around and sew back through that same gold bead. So see how those 3 beads just kind of hang out on the top there? Sew through the next 2 beads in the silver Hubble stitch. My corner right there. And then after you sew through those 2 beads, sew through the next gold bead. And once again, then 3 beads go on. 1, 2, 3 of your gold beads. Sew back through the gold bead. Your thread's coming out the bottom. You add the 3 beads and you sew into the top. From there, sew down through bead number 3 of that Hubble unit that you're on. Or sorry, bead number 2 rather. And then up through bead number 1. So you're just sewing through the 2 silver beads that sit right next to each other between the golds. From here again through the gold. And once again add 3 beads as a little crown on the gold bead. 3 beads get added, circle back through the gold. Take inventory and look at it. You're going to sew through the next 2 silvers that lead up to the next gold. Down bead number 2 from the Hubble unit you're on. Up bead number 1 from the next Hubble unit, which are those 2 silvers that sit in a row. And then once again, out the gold and add your 3 15s. So I'm going to continue going the whole way around the piece here, adding in that little crown of 3 15s on the exterior of every gold bead. Once you're finished going around and adding your little kind of crown of 15 O's, I want you to bring your thread and needle back to the top of that and sew through beads number 1 and 2 of those 15s that you just added. So there's 15s the whole way around. It's kind of funny, it sits almost like a sea creature here. And we're going to start to bring these beads the way that they want to towards the middle. How we are going to do that is we are going to come out the top of the bead. So we did 3 beads. We're going to kind of push 1 and 2 down to the side, and we're going to go through, or sorry, 1 and 3 down to the side, and we're going to catch on to bead number 2. To do so, we're going to pick up 1 15, 1 8 of our alternate colors, so the silver, another 15, and we're going to connect all of these exterior little crowns, sewing through, once again, bead number 2. That's going to push kind of bead number 1 down to the side, bead number 3 down to the side as well. Coming out here, 15, 8, 15. Go to the next little crown section and pick up and go through bead number 2. So see how that's starting to bend that in like the bezel. Now, where it's going to be different is where we have the 2 silver beads right next to one another in all of our corners. So I'm going to keep going here, gathering my 15, 8, 15, sewing that, then grabbing bead number 2 that sits at the top. Once again, 15, 8, 15, grabbing that center bead that sits at the top. Now I'm at one of my corners. So here at the corner, it's going to be a little bit of a different pattern. So see how that's starting to do that curvature, which is going to wrap around our crystal. For the corners, we are going to change up the pattern just a tiny little bit. So see how we're coming out of the corner here? We are going to add an 11 instead of a 15. However, I want to go down a little bit further. So on the corners, we are going to sew through bead number 3, And then instead of the 15, 8, 15, we're going to do 15, 11, 15. And then we're going to sew up through beads number 1 and 2 on the other side. So see how that just changed the shape just a tiny little bit. Once again, continue on to the next corner, going ahead and adding in your 15, pour them over here, 15, 8, 15, sew through and connect to the next top, which would be bead number 2. Same deal here, 15, 8, 15. So you're going to do this basically 4 times. Connect, and then the 5th time is where we use an 11 instead, and we sew down the beads just a tiny bit different. So this is number 3, going and just connecting again to that second bead, and you will start to see this bezel shape starting to happen. And now once again, I'm at a corner. How do I know I'm at a corner? Because these 2 beads sit in the middle and the interior are both silver. Remember, gold, silver, gold, silver, gold, silver. Then you get to 2 silvers, you know you're on the corner. When you're on the corner, you're going to go down into bead number 3. You're going to grab an 11 this time, 15, 11, 15. And then once again, sew back up through beads number 1 and bead number 2. Now we have the 3rd side to do here. And then when we get back to this first corner, the sewing down beads number 2 and 3, and then back up as well. At this point, you can see the triangle taking shape a little bit, but we still need to work on how we are holding that in. The way that we are going to hold this in is basically those 4 8-0 seed beads will go to the side, and we're going to connect them and make them a little bit tighter together. See how beautiful that is in those colors. So coming out, our last beads that we've been circling around, I came through and I added my little 11 in the middle of the 15s. And I'm coming out through my first 8-0 that I added. I've gone through the 15, the 8-0, and I want to again go through the next 15. So remember how we caught onto the top here of that little point of that center bead number 2? What we're going to do is ignore that. We're sewing now right through the 3 beads that we just added. 15, 8, 15. Once again, they'll pop kind of to the top a little bit. 15, 8, 15. So I'm not adding any beads right this second. 15, 8, 15. And then when we get to the corner, what we are going to do in the corner is we are going to add an additional little kind of grouping of beads. So to add that little additional grouping of beads, we're going to use an 11, and then we're going to use an 8, and then we're going to use an 11. So coming out of the 15, 11, 8, 11, and I'm using the gold bead. I want it to be the alternate color. Skipping over that middle 11 now, I'm going to go to my next 8, 11, or sorry, 15, 8, 15 group. So you're skipping that corner. So this pattern always has a variation on the corner. So see how that really pulls that in? Once again, now we're going to connect the next 3 15, 8-0 combos. So there's number 2. Here's number 3. Usually you can just pull them a little bit to the top and you'll be able to go through. And then through number 4. And then when I come out number 4, once again, I'm at a corner. So to do that corner and really exaggerate that corner, I am going to add 11, 8, 11, skip over to the next 15, 8, 15. So I'm skipping that whole section of beads and just connecting again to that 8 and 15s. So see how I have those 2 corners in tightly now. What I'm going to want to do at this point is put my triangle into my setting as I start to go around and pull a little bit more. So I'm just going to kind of push that down in there, push those seed beads out, pull those little beads as a cap along, and now I'm going to continue on. Out bead number 2 grouping of that 15, 8, 15, out bead number 3 grouping, through number 4, and then as you exit number 4, where you're going to be exiting through the first 15 after the 8, and then we're doing our 11 silver, gold 8, 11 silver, and connecting on to the next grouping of 15, 8, 15. So this is my third and final corner of this, going in and connecting and really cinching it together. So keep going around, and then we're going to reinforce that first one that we just did. So this beautiful triangle bezel is completed, but we're going to go around and tighten it up one more time. Anytime I'm doing a bezel, I like to tighten up the top or where the bezel is going to kind of be open to the stone. Both the back and the front are always a good idea to reinforce. What we're going to do is come out of the 8-0 right near that corner. We're going to add 2 15s, and we're going to sew through the corner gold 8-0. We're going to add 2 15s, and then we're going to sew into the next silver 8-0. As I sew into that next silver 8-0 seed bead, you want to make sure that those 15s go in front of the 11s, kind of push them together. And now right along the sides, once again, we're reinforcing, going through the 15, 8, 15 combo. Once you're down through there, you can see I was able to take my needle the whole way down through there. I want to make sure that I come out the last 8 before the 15, add 2 15s because it always changes in the corner, go through that gold 8-0 that's there, make sure those 15s sit right in front and just caps in the corner there. It's a beautiful look. Add 2 more 15s, go through the next 8, and then once again do your line of 8 15 8 15 with your thread and needle exiting right towards the end, coming out through the 8. Make sure those 15s sit in front of the 11, and that'll get you a nice bezeled corner. One more to go here, and then our center section here is complete. If you don't want to continue on to the necklace portion and do up the sides, you can just make yourself a plain bezel here, or a plain bail rather. You can see I kind of let my needle go where it wanted to go because I need to get towards the top, what I'm going to consider the top of the piece. So see how that has a nice fit in there, nice tight look. I'm going to circle it around and show you all those 8s. Not going anywhere. That's what the back looks like. The nice thing about the back is that it sits a little bit raised. So if you want to, you can permalac the back, but it's not going to sit on anything. So that's nice. From here, I'm going to take my thread and needle back through the design, kind of wherever the needle wants to go along the thread line. And we're going to get to one of the corners. So I'm coming up through that 8 there. I'm going to go down, making sure that my thread is going along the thread line. And where we want to come out are these 2 8-0s. We're going to start with one side, and we are going to be linking on to the side our trillion bead. We're going to do this in a right angle weave fashion, and then we're going to continue up the side with that right angle weave so that we have a nice look of that trillion. I'm choosing to use 4 of my trillion beads here to get my necklace style. If you want it to be a little bit less, you can just use 2, or you can do what I'm going to do for the whole beaded rope section. Now in this example, I did not use any crystals up the back. I am going to be using some crystals up the back in an opal color as I create my band for this beautiful opal triangle. So we're going to get and sew to the top. So I'm coming out the right side of that 8-0 towards the corner of the triangle. Coming out the top here, we are going to do some right angle weave. And the right angle weave that we're going to do is going to start with our 15-0. Then we're going to go to our 11-0. And then we're going to add in one of our crystals. Then we're going to repeat that. 11, 15, and we're going to add a gold now. And we're going to do that same pattern again. So 15, 11, crystal, 11, 15. And we're going to be doing right angle weave to connect these pieces. So you can see kind of that pattern right there. We go smallest to biggest toward the crystal. And then we're going to sew back through that same gold bead that our thread is coming out of. So the thread's coming out to the left, I'm going and coming out to the right. That's going to create a little link, basically. We're going to sew up just like right angle weave. We're going to sew up through that right side, and then we're going to come out through that top bead. From here, we're going to get ready to add on our first triangle. Now my triangles here, the trillions, are going to be a 12 millimeter trillion, and I want to make sure that it's sitting correctly so that the holes are facing, almost like a turtle look, that the holes are facing with the point towards the front. Coming out this right side, I'm going to repeat the same design. So I'm going to do my 15 and then my 11. And instead of adding a crystal next, we're going to add this big guy. I'm going to go through the right-hand side so I make sure that my crystal's sitting correctly. I'm going to take my thread and needle and we're just going to go straight through to the hole in the back and out the top. When I come out the top, I'm going to repeat that center section, which is going to be a 11, a 15, a gold bead, 15, 11. Once there, we're going to come down the other side of the trillion. So that's going to wrap to the back here. And then coming out the trillion, 11, 15. Sew through that 8 seed bead in gold from the opposite side. So see how we're just kind of connecting that nice and tight along the side there. I'm going to reinforce this and go back through these beads one whole time, going through the trillion, out the top of the trillion, making sure my thread stays in there, going along the top here, coming down along the side of the beads, down through the trillion, and back through the 11, the 15, and the 8. Give a nice tight pull so you don't have any extra thread showing. From here, we're going to decorate the side of the trillion. So I'm going to go through the 15 and the 11. We're going to stick beads on the side. The beads on the side are going to be 1, 2, 3 of my 11s, one of my crystals, one of my 8s, crystal 8s, and then 3 of my 11s. From here, go back into the top, and we're going to link through all the beads at the top. So the 11, 15, 8, down through the 15, the 11, and we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side, going in and adding 3 11s, followed by your crystal group of 8, crystal 8, followed by 3 more 11s. And once those 3 11s are added, then we're going to go down to the side here and go through the 11, the 15, and the 8 one more time. And see how that just really nicely decorates the side of that trillion bead. If you don't want or don't like the look of the crystals on the side, you're simply going to omit them and just use one more 8 seed bead. From here, I'm going to go back through that first side, and we're going to do some right angle weave before we add our next crystal on. I'm just going back up through all these beads along the side here, tightening that up until I get to that center 8 seed bead. When I get to the center 8 seed bead, we're going to repeat this same right angle weave pattern that we did previously. 15, 11, crystal, and we're going to do 11, 15, gold bead. Once again, the same thing on the opposite side then. 15, 11, crystal, as I clean up my bead mat, 11, 15, and then we're going to go back through that gold bead. Once we go back through the gold bead, we're at the same spot that we just started this trillion. So we're just going to keep repeating. Going in here, up the side, making sure you're not catching on any of your bezel there. And then coming out through that gold 8 seed bead. Once we're through this gold 8 seed bead, we're on repeat. So YouTube is great because you can slow it down. You can go below the video and comment if you're having any trouble or if you're having any suggestions or if you change up the pattern. The other thing you can do is take it back a couple scenes to a couple of the chapters, they call it, to rewatch how I attach this crystal, because we're doing the exact same thing one more time. Once you establish your second crystal connection there, what you can do is go up the back, and I'm just using that same simple right angle weave stitch, continuing on to get my piece about 17 to 18 inches. So I'm going to continue on adding in my right angle weave. And what I'm going to do here on this side is tie on a new piece of thread to this existing thread and come out the top left bead here and repeat the exact same pattern. So what you're going to end up with when you're looking at it then is you're going to end up with them sitting equal on either side. And you can see here how the chain of the crystals really kind of lends itself to a whole different look. This is very, very white and weddingy and blingy, and I can't wait to start on this other side. Once you get your right angle weave chain as long as you want it to, you're going to want to add your clasp. So I've already done one side here of my necklace, adding on my clasp, and I'm at the end of that repeated section of right angle weave, and I'm getting ready to add the tongue of the clasp. Coming out my last 8 seed bead, I am going to add a series of 15, then 11, then my crystal, and I'm going to sew through the tongue of the clasp. Come back through that crystal, so your thread's coming through, and after the crystal, we're going to repeat the 11 and the 15. So through that 8 seed bead, and we're going to reinforce this clasp. Going back up through the 15 and the 11, through the crystal, through the clasp. Make sure that you're getting through the loop of that clasp, back down through the crystal, and back to the other side. This is the second time through. I'm going to do this 3 times total. And I ended up with my necklace being about 17 inches. You can make it a little bit longer, a little bit shorter. It's up to you. And I'm going to go back through now, caught an extra seed bead there, reinforce, and then I'm going to show you how I tied off my thread. I'm going to go back through the crystal, through the clasp, then back down through the crystal as well, and back through the side of the clasp. Once you have that third set through there, you're going to sew down through your right angle weave. So the way to sew down through the right angle weave is to literally sew down along this side. So I'm going through the 8-0. I'm going to go through the 15-8 crystal, 15. I'm going to go through the 8-0 seed bead, crossing through there, making sure as I do this that I'm coming down through all of the beads, the 15, 11, 3 millimeter round in that opal color, over to the other side. I can go back up through if I want to. I'm circling around, kind of tying everything in place. And then as I circle around, I'm going to do a sewer's knot. So I'm coming out there between the 8 and the 15. I'm going to sew underneath the thread that connects the two together and create a loop. Sew through that loop once, sew through that loop 2 times. Make sure that thread is still located between the 15 and the 8 and give a nice tight pull. Sew through the 8, pulling that knot inside the 8, and then I'm going to do this one more time, going down through the side, sewing through a bead here, going underneath the bridge thread or the thread that connects those 2 beads together, 15 and an 8, sew through the loop that I've created, and sew through the loop one more time. Pull that nice and tight, and then bring your thread out to another location. From here, take your thread burner or your thread zap, press down on the button, heat it up, and burn off that extra thread and burn it flush towards the project. That finishes off your necklace, and you have this beautiful, beautiful triangle piece. If you really want to make it even more so, of a statement piece, you can add additional crystals to the top of the design. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. You can see the lay of the necklace and how it fits in that 17-inch size with that nice, beautiful clasp. You can make earrings out of the same design of the trillion. And remember, you can comment below. Once again, if you do need a little help, check in that description below to order materials as well as to get links to learn that Hubble stitch and the right angle weave, which you're going to use along the back. As always, thanks so much for watching and stay tuned for the next inspirational design.